Admiral Deho stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vigil, his eyes fixed on the holographic display that floated before him. The massive warship orbited Mars in silence, just as it had for the past 70 years. He was old now, nearly 90, but his mind remained sharp. It had to be. His entire life had been spent waiting for this moment. The communications officer, a young woman named Jiwan, suddenly straightened in her chair. Her hands moved across her console with practiced speed. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. Deep space origin. The signature matches. It matches the Velkrath." The bridge fell silent. Every person aboard knew what that meant. Every human alive knew what that meant. Deho felt his heart beat faster, but his voice remained calm. "Put it through." The message was simple. A voice spoke in a language that humanity had studied for 6,000 years, translated instantly by their computers. "The grace period has concluded. Surrender your worlds within one solar rotation, or face annihilation. The Velkrath Armada approaches." 6,000 years ago, humanity had been young. They had just developed faster than light travel. Earth was barely united, still recovering from the climate wars. There were only 3 colony worlds, each struggling to survive. And then the Velkrath had arrived. Deho remembered the historical records. He had watched them 1,000 times. The Velkrath fleet had appeared without warning, massive ships that dwarfed anything humanity had built. Their commander had delivered a message to Earth's leaders. The Velkrath Empire claimed all of this region of space. Humanity could have 6,000 years to develop their civilization, to enjoy their existence. Then the Velkrath would return, and humanity would become part of the empire. The leaders of Earth had protested. They had argued, but what could they do? The Velkrath had weapons that could burn planets. Their shields could withstand anything humanity threw at them. So Earth's leaders had accepted the terms. They had no choice, but they had made another choice too. A choice that would define humanity for the next 6,000 years. Deho walked to the window and looked out at Mars. The red planet was no longer red. Terraforming had turned it green and blue, covered in cities and forests. Beyond Mars lay the asteroid belt, now home to millions of mining stations and shipyards. Beyond that, Jupiter's moons glowed with the lights of human civilization, and beyond that, stretching across 847 star systems, humanity thrived. "Get me President Yuna," Deho said. The connection took only seconds. The president's face appeared on the screen, her expression already grave. She had been waiting for this call. Every president for the past 6,000 years had been waiting for this call. "They've made contact," Deho said. "I know," Yuna replied. "We picked up the transmission on Earth 30 seconds ago. The Council is assembling now." "What are your orders, Madam President?" Yuna smiled, and there was no fear in her eyes. Only determination. "Follow the plan, Admiral. Follow the plan we've been building for 6,000 years. On Earth, the Terran Council gathered in the Great Hall beneath Geneva. Representatives from every human world took their seats. There were no arguments, no debates. Every person in that room had been born knowing this day would come. Their parents had known. Their grandparents had known. 240 generations of humanity had known. President Yuna stood before them. "The Velkrath have returned. They demand our surrender. They give us 1 day to comply. I call for a vote. Do we surrender, or do we fight?" The vote took less than 3 minutes. 847 representatives. 847 votes for war. Not a single voice of dissent, because humanity had not wasted their 6,000 years. In the first 100 years after the Velkrath left, Earth had united completely. Every nation had joined together under one government. Not because they wanted to, but because they had to. The Velkrath were coming back. There was no time for petty conflicts between humans. In the next 1,000 years, humanity had spread across the solar system. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid that could support life was colonized. They built ships, millions of ships, and sent them to the stars. They found habitable worlds and claimed them. They built cities that stretched across continents. They had children And those children had children. And every single one was raised with the same purpose. The Velcrath were coming back. Be ready. Schools taught Velcrath language, Velcrath culture, Velcrath military tactics. Every child learned to fight. Every adult trained in combat. Scientists studied Velcrath technology day and night, finding ways to match it, to surpass it. Engineers built weapons designed specifically to destroy Velcrath ships. Programmers wrote code to hack Velcrath systems. 6,000 years of preparation. 6,000 years of unity. 6,000 years of purpose. Captain Minho received the alert on Bastion 7, a massive defense station floating near Neptune. He read the message and immediately activated the station's weapons. Around him, 1,000 other defense stations did the same. Hidden weapon platforms scattered throughout the solar system came online. Mines that had been floating dormant in space for centuries activated their sensors. Minho opened a channel 2. Admiral Deho. Bastion 7 ready, sir. All defensive positions are active. We're ready for them. Good, Deho replied. Make sure every ship is in position. They'll be here soon. On the far side of Jupiter, Captain Junho sat in the command chair of the Silent Promise. His ship was a stealth carrier, completely invisible to sensors. Around him, 4,000 other stealth ships waited in the darkness. They had been waiting here for 3 months, completely silent, completely still. Junho had volunteered for this position. His family had been military for 200 generations. His ancestor, 6,000 years ago, had been part of the first response team when the Velcrath arrived. That ancestor had sworn an oath that his descendants would be ready when the aliens returned. Junho intended to keep that oath. Admiral. Deho composed humanity's response to the Velcrath message. He kept it simple. Your grace period was our preparation period. We're ready. Come and try. He sent the message and waited. In his mind, he ran through the battle plans one more time. Every officer in the fleet had memorized them. Every soldier on every world knew their role. 6,000 years of preparation had led to this moment. The Velcrath had thought they were being generous. They had given humanity time to enjoy their existence before joining the Empire. They had no idea what they had actually done. They had given humanity the greatest gift possible. They had given them time. They had given them a deadline. They had given them a purpose. And humanity had used every single second of those 6,000 years to prepare for war. Deho looked at the stars and smiled. Let them come. The Velcrath armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system like a swarm of metal locusts. 10,000 warships, each 5 kilometers long. Bristling with weapons that had conquered 40 species across 1,000,000 years, their hulls were black and angular, designed to inspire fear in anyone who saw them. Fleet Commander Thulman stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. He was old even by Velcrath standards, having served in the military for 3 centuries. He had overseen the subjugation of 12 species. This would be his 13th and final conquest before retirement. He expected it to be easy. The records from 6,000 years ago showed a primitive species barely capable of basic space travel. They had possessed no shields, no plasma weapons, no quantum drives. Their largest ship had been smaller than a Velcrath fighter craft. Send the final demand, Thulman ordered. Tell them they have 1 hour to surrender. On Mars Station, Lieutenant Soman received the transmission. She was young, only 25, but she had trained for this her entire life. She opened a channel to the Velcrath flagship. This is Lieutenant Soman of the Terran Federation, she said in perfect Velcrath language. Your demand is denied. Turn back now, or be destroyed. There was a long pause. Then Thulman's voice came through, confused and slightly amused. You cannot be serious. Have you seen our fleet? We have 10,000 warships. How many do you have? Enough, Salman replied. Thulman checked his sensors. They showed only a few hundred human ships, scattered throughout the system. Small vessels, nothing compared to the might of the Velcrath armada. He laughed. Very well. If you choose death, we will grant it. All ships, advance to Earth. destroy any resistance. The Velcrath fleet moved forward, their formation perfect after millions of years of practice. They passed Mars, expecting the human ships there to flee or be destroyed quickly. Instead, the space around them suddenly filled with targets. Captain Junho gave the order. All stealth ships, decloak now. 4,000 ships appeared out of nowhere, surrounding the Velcrath fleet. These weren't the small vessels Thulman had detected. These were battleships, carriers, dreadnoughts. Each one bristled with weapons that the Velcrath had never seen before. Fire, Junho said calmly. The space between Mars and Jupiter lit up like a new sun. Human weapons, designed specifically to pierce Velcrath shields, tore into the alien fleet. Quantum disruptor cannons ripped through hull plating. Plasma torpedoes exploded against shield generators, overloading them in seconds. Missile swarms overwhelmed point defense systems. Thulman stared in shock as his sensors showed 200 Velcrath ships destroyed in the first 30 seconds. Impossible. How do they have this technology? His tactical officer was frantically trying to analyze the human weapons. Sir, their weapons are specifically designed to counter our defenses. It's as if they knew exactly how our systems work. 'Cause we did. Summon's voice came through the communication channel. We've had 6,000 years to study you. We know everything about your ships, your weapons, your tactics. We've been ready for this day since before my great-great-great-great-great-grandmother was born. Engineer Hai-Jin watched from the dreadnought. Defiance as the quantum disruptors she had helped design tore through Velcrath shields. The weapons worked perfectly, exactly as the simulations had predicted. Those simulations had been running for 4,000 years, refined by generation after generation of scientists. But the Velcrath were not helpless. They had conquered 40 species. They had fought wars across the galaxy, and they had numbers. Thulman recovered from his shock quickly. All ships, combat formation, Delta 7. Concentrate fire on their largest vessels. We may have lost the element of surprise, but we still outnumber them. The Velcrath ships reformed, their ancient tactics kicking in. They began to target the human dreadnoughts, and their weapons were devastating. Velcrath plasma cannons could burn through a kilometer of ship hull in seconds. Their antimatter torpedoes could crack planets. Admiral Deho watched as the human ship Glorious Dawn exploded, its shields overwhelmed by concentrated Velcrath fire. Then another ship, the New Horizon. Then another. 300 human ships destroyed in the first hour. But for every human ship that fell, 3 Velcrath ships died. On Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, General Taijin watched his sensors. Velcrath landing craft were descending toward the colony. The aliens were trying to take hostages to force humanity to surrender. Let them land, Taijin ordered. Then show them what we've prepared. The Velcrath soldiers emerged from their landing craft, expecting to find frightened civilians. Instead, they found fortified positions, automated turrets, and soldiers who had trained for this exact scenario since childhood. 8-year-old. Children on Europa knew how to use a plasma rifle. Teenagers served in the civilian defense force. The elderly operated weapon systems from bunkers deep underground. Every single person on every human world was a soldier when needed. The Velcroth invasion force on Europa was destroyed within 2 hours. Similar scenes played out on Titan, Ganymede, and a dozen other moons. The Velcrath had expected easy victories. Instead, they found that humanity had turned every world, every station, every asteroid into a fortress. Back in the main battle, Thulman was beginning to understand the magnitude of his mistake. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were winning. How is this possible? He muttered, watching another wing of his ships get destroyed by human fighters that moved faster than anything he had ever seen. 6,000 years ago, they were nothing. His second-in-command pulled up the historical records. Commander, we gave them 6,000 years. We told them exactly when we would return. We gave them a deadline. Thulman felt something cold settle in his stomach. We gave them time to prepare. Not just time, sir. We gave them a purpose, a goal, a reason to unite their entire species, and they used every single year of those 6,000 years to get ready for this exact battle. On every human ship, soldiers fought with a determination that shocked the Velcroth. These weren't warriors fighting for conquest or glory. They were people defending their homes against an enemy they had known was coming for 6,000 years. Corporal Seogen piloted his fighter through a storm of Velcroth fire. His ancestor, 240 generations ago, had been a programmer who helped design the first combat algorithms to fight the Velcroth. Every generation of his family had added to that knowledge, refined it, proved it. Now Seogen flew using tactics that had been perfected over 6 millennia. He knew how Velcroth pilots thought. He knew how they moved. He could predict their actions before they made them. He destroyed 5 Velcroth fighters in 3 minutes. Medical. Officer Gion worked frantically in the medical bay of the Eternal Vigil, treating wounded soldiers. Her family had studied Velcroth biology for 6,000 years. She knew exactly how to treat injuries caused by Velcroth weapons. She knew what medicines would work, what procedures would save lives. She saved 30 soldiers in the first hour of battle. Thulman made a decision. All ships, retreat to Rally Point Theta. We need reinforcements. The Velcroth fleet began to pull back, fighting as they withdrew. They had lost 4,000 ships. Humanity had lost 1,200 as the Velcroth fled. Thulman sent a faster-than-light message to the Velcroth homeworld, 2,000 light-years away. Emergency. Request full Imperial fleet. Enemy strength severely underestimated. These humans, they were ready for us. Admiral Deho watched the Velcroth retreat. He felt no joy. This was only the beginning. But he felt satisfaction. 6,000 years of preparation had not been wasted. Humanity had sent a message to the galaxy. They were not prey. They were not victims. They were ready. Dr. Yunji appeared on every screen across human space. Her broadcast reached every ship, every station, every world. The Velcroth intercepted it too, and their translation systems worked quickly to understand her words. For 6,000 years, Yunji said, her voice calm and clear, humanity has prepared for this moment. Every school lesson, every military drill, every weapons test, all of it designed for one purpose: to defeat the Velcroth. She pulled up holographic displays showing the depth of human preparation. Battle simulations numbering in the billions. Weapons designed specifically to counter Velcroth technology. Tactics developed by analyzing every recorded Velcroth battle in history. You gave us a deadline, Yunji continued, and we used it. Every single day for 6,000 years, we got ready for you. On the Velcroth flagship, Thulman watched the broadcast with growing horror. He accessed the human networks, which were surprisingly open. What he found shocked him. Human children learned Velcroth language in school alongside mathematics. Teenagers studied Velcroth military history. Universities offered degrees in Velcroth biology, psychology, and tactics. There were entire government departments dedicated to analyzing Velcroth culture. The Velcroth had been studied, dissected, and analyzed by billions of humans across 6,000 years. Corporal Seogen flew his fighter back to the Eternal Vigil for repairs. As he waited in the hangar bay, he thought about his family history. His ancestor, 240 generations ago, had been named Seogen too. That first Seogen had been a young programmer when the Velcroth first arrived. That ancestor had made a vow. His children would continue his work. They would prepare for the day the Velcroth returned. Every generation of his family had kept that vow. Every Saigen, every daughter, every son. 240 generations of soldiers, scientists, engineers, all working toward this single goal. Now, the current Saigen sat in his fighter and knew that his family's sacrifice had not been in vain. He had destroyed 17 Velcroth fighters today. Each victory was a tribute to his ancestors. In the medical bay, Gion worked without rest. The wounded kept coming. Burns from plasma weapons, injuries from explosive decompression, radiation poisoning from damaged reactors. She treated them all with practiced efficiency. Her great-great-grandmother, 500 generations back, had been part of the first team to study Velcrath biology after the initial contact. That woman had dissected the few Velcrath biological samples left behind. She had mapped their physiology, identified weaknesses, developed treatments for their weapons. Every generation after had added to that knowledge. Now Gyeong held the culmination of 6,000 years of medical research in her hands. She could treat Velcrath weapon injuries better than anyone in history, but people still died, Admiral. Daeho stood on the bridge and reviewed the casualty reports. 1,200 ships lost, 300,000 soldiers dead, 12 colony stations destroyed. The civilian casualty count was climbing into the millions. This was the cost humanity had always known it would pay. He opened a secure channel to the Terran Council. President Yuna appeared on screen, her face tired but determined. The Velcrath are retreating, Daeho reported, but they're not defeated. They'll regroup and come back with more ships, I know, Yuna said. Fleet Admiral Sang-hoon is already preparing the counteroffensive, Madame President. We'll be taking the war into their territory. We've never fought in Velcrath space before. We don't know what defenses they have there, Yuna nodded. I understand the risk, Admiral, but we can't just defend. If we wait for them to bring their full fleet here, Earth itself might burn. We have to strike their shipyards, destroy their ability to replace losses. Daeho agreed. It was the right strategy. The only strategy, but it meant more death, more destruction. On Ganymede, Captain Jisoo supervised the evacuation of the northern cities. The Velcrath bombardment had turned thousands of square kilometers into molten glass. The beautiful green forests that had taken centuries to grow were gone. The cities where millions had lived were destroyed. Jisoo helped load civilians onto transport ships. An old woman grabbed her arm. Is it true? Did we win? Jisoo looked at the ruined landscape behind them. We survived. But the war isn't over. The old woman smiled through her tears. My grandmother told me stories. She said the Velcrath would come back. She said we would be ready. Was she right? Yes, Jisoo said. We were ready. And we're still fighting. But at what cost? Jisoo wondered. Ganymede was only one moon. What would Earth look like if the Velcrath reached it? What would humanity become if this war lasted years, decades, centuries? In a bunker on Titan, hacker Minziok reviewed the data his virus had collected from Velcrath systems. The information was incredible. Ship designs, fleet positions, communication protocols, the location of the Velcrath homeworld. We've got everything, he told his team. We know where they'll regroup. We know their supply lines. We know where their shipyards are. One of his teammates, a young woman named Haiwan, looked troubled. Minziok, I've been reading through their cultural files. The Velcrath. They're not just conquerors. They have families. They write poetry. They have art, music, philosophy. So did the 40 species they conquered, Minziok replied coldly. They chose to come here. They chose to threaten us. We're just defending ourselves. I know, Haiwan said. But when does defense become revenge? When do we become like them? It was a question many humans were starting to ask. President Yuna addressed the Terran Federation that night. Billions of people watched as she spoke. Today, we proved that 6,000 years of preparation was not wasted. We defended our homes. We protected our families. But this victory came at a terrible cost. Millions of our people are dead. Entire cities are destroyed. She paused, her expression grave. The Velcrath will return. They will bring more ships, and we will fight them again. We will fight them as many times as necessary, because we are not just fighting for survival. We are fighting for the right to exist as a free species. Our ancestors knew this day would come. They prepared us for it. They gave us the tools, the knowledge, the strength, to stand against an empire that has conquered half the galaxy. We will honor their sacrifice by finishing what they started. The broadcast ended, but Yuna remained in her office. She pulled up classified reports about humanity's weapons development. There were projects that even most military leaders didn't know about. Weapons that could destroy entire star systems. viral agents designed to target Velcrath biology specifically. These weapons had been developed over thousands of years, refined and tested in secret. They were humanity's final option if conventional warfare failed. Yuna hoped they would never be needed. But she knew her ancestors had hoped the same thing about conventional warfare. Sometimes, hope wasn't enough. On the Velcrath flagship, Thelman received confirmation that his message had reached the homeworld. The full Imperial fleet would mobilize. 50,000 warships would make the journey to human space, but it would take time. Even with faster-than-light travel, moving such a massive fleet required careful coordination. He used that time to study humanity more carefully. What he learned disturbed him deeply. The Velcrath had fought many wars, but they had never fought an enemy that had prepared specifically for them for 6,000 years. Every human tactic was designed to counter Velcrath's strategy. Every human weapon was built to destroy Velcrath's ships. Every human soldier was trained to fight Velcrath. Warriors. Thelman began to understand that the Velcrath Empire had made a terrible mistake 6,000 years ago. They had been arrogant. They had assumed that a primitive species would remain primitive. Instead, they had created the most dangerous enemy they had ever faced. Admiral Deho gave the order. Prepare the Deep Strike Fleet. We're taking the fight to them. 5,000 of humanity's fastest ships prepared to jump to hyperspace. Their mission was simple, but deadly. Follow the Velcrath home and destroy their shipyards before reinforcements could arrive. It was a desperate gamble. But humanity had been gambling for 6,000 years, and so far, they had been winning. Commander Bora stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Swift Vengeance, as 5,000 human ships prepared to jump to hyperspace. She was 40 years old and had spent her entire life training for war, like everyone in her generation. She had grown up knowing the Velcrath would return. Now she was about to do something no human had ever done before. She was going to invade Velcrath's space. All ships report ready, her tactical officer announced. Jump, Bora ordered. 5,000 ships vanished from human space and reappeared in Velcrath territory. The journey took 3 days, traveling along hyperspace lanes that humanity had mapped over centuries of careful exploration. What they found surprised them. The Velcrath Empire was vast. 12 star systems, each containing multiple worlds. But there were no military patrols, no defense stations, no weapon platforms. They haven't fought a real war in thousands of years, Bora realized. They've grown soft. The first Velcrath colony world they encountered didn't even have planetary shields. The cities were beautiful, full of art and architecture that had stood for millennia. But there were no bunkers, no fortifications, no preparations for war. Target the military installations only, Bora ordered. Avoid civilian centers? Her weapons officer looked uncertain. Commander, General Wujin's orders were to use maximum force. Destroy their ability to make war. I said avoid civilians, Bora repeated firmly. We're not monsters. The human fleet struck the shipyard facilities with precision. Plasma cannons destroyed construction docks. Torpedoes obliterated weapons factories. But the residential areas remained untouched. On the surface, Velcrath civilians watched in terror as their sky filled with human warships. They had never seen war. The Velcrath Empire had been at peace for 10,000 years. Peace built on the suffering of conquered species, but peace nonetheless. On Drax's prime, a world conquered by the Velcrath 40,000 years ago, Ambassador Kyungmin made contact with the local population. The Velsia people had been slaves for longer than human civilization had existed. We're fighting the Velcrath, Kyungmin explained through a translator. We can give you weapons. We can train you to fight. The Velsia leader, an ancient being named Quor, studied Kyungmin carefully. Why would you help us? You don't know us, 'cause freedom is the right of all species, Kyungmin said. The Velcrath tried to take ours. We won't let them keep yours. Within days, weapons were flowing to 17 subject species across Velcrath space. Rebellions erupted on world after world. The Velcrath Empire, stable for millennia, began to crack. But not everyone in the human fleet agreed with the strategy of restraint. General, Wujin commanded a battle group of heavy destroyers. He had lost his entire family when the Velcrath bombarded Ganymede. His wife, his children, his parents, all gone in an instant. When he reached a Velcrath industrial world, he didn't show mercy. His ships bombarded the planet's infrastructure without discrimination. Power plants, water treatment facilities, transportation networks, all destroyed. Dr. Hanuel, a xenoethicist embedded with Wujin's fleet, confronted him in his office. "General, you're destroying civilian infrastructure. People will die from lack of clean water, medical care, food distribution." Wujin's expression was cold. "They gave us 6,000 years to think about what we would do to them when they came back. We thought about it very carefully." "This is revenge, not strategy," Hanuel protested. "This is war," Wujin replied. "The Velcrath taught us that. They came to conquer us, to make us slaves. Now they're learning what it feels like to be helpless." Hanuel left his office troubled. She filed a report with the Terran Council, but she didn't know if it would matter. War was changing humanity. Just as 6,000 years of preparation had changed humanity, the main target of the human counteroffensive was Velcros, the largest shipyard complex in the Velcrath Empire. This single facility produced 60% of all Velcrath warships. Commander Bora led the assault personally. 2,000 human ships against the station's defenses. The battle was brutal. Engineer JN led a strike team aboard the station itself. They fought through corridors filled with Velcrath soldiers, planting experimental weapons at key structural points. "These charges will cause a chain reaction," Jayon explained to his team. "The whole station will tear itself apart." A young soldier named Siwan looked nervous. "Sir, there are civilian workers on this station. Families." "I know," Jahan said quietly. "The evacuation alarm has been sounded. They have 30 minutes to get to the escape pods. That's all we can give them." The charges were set. The human strike team fought their way back to their ships. Behind them, the Velcrath scrambled to evacuate the station. Some made it. Many didn't. The explosion was visible from 3 light-years away. Velcro's shipyard, a structure that had existed for 20,000 years, was destroyed in seconds. With it died the Velcrath's ability to quickly replace their losses, and with it died 8,000 Velcrath civilians who hadn't reached the escape pods in time, back on Earth. President Yuna received the casualty reports. The human fleet had lost a third of its ships at Velcros. 15,000 soldiers dead. But the strategic objective was achieved. She also received reports of General Wujin's actions. The destroyed civilian infrastructure, the indirect casualties from his scorched earth tactics. She called an emergency session of the Terran Council. "We need to discuss the ethics of this war. Are we fighting to defend ourselves, or are we becoming conquerors ourselves?" The debate raged for hours. Some argued that the Velcrath deserved no mercy. Others insisted that humanity must maintain its principles even in war. In the end, the Council issued new rules of engagement. Avoid civilian casualties where possible. Focus on military targets. Offer surrender to Velcrath forces before attacking. But they also authorized the use of humanity's most classified weapons if necessary. On the Velcrath homeworld, Emperor Tharkal addressed his people for the first time in 800 years. He was ancient beyond measure, having ruled for 8,000 years. "The humans have invaded our territory," he announced. "They have destroyed Velcros. They have incited rebellion among our subject species. This cannot stand." He activated protocols that hadn't been used in 50,000 years. Total military mobilization, conscription of all subject species, and the deployment of the Starbreakers. The Starbreakers were weapons from an ancient war. Weapons capable of igniting stars into supernovas. The Velcrath had sworn never to use them again after the war with the architects nearly destroyed both civilizations 50,000 years ago. But Tharkal was desperate. Desperate beings do desperate things. Intelligence Officer Nari intercepted Velcrath communications and decoded them. What she found made her blood run cold. "Admiral Deho, the Velcrath are activating ancient weapons. They're called Starbreakers. According to their records, these weapons can destroy entire star systems. Deho felt ice in his veins. Target: Proxima Centauri. 3 billion human colonists. Deho immediately sent the evacuation order. Every ship in the sector rushed to Proxima Centauri. They had 12 hours before the Starbreaker activated. Captain Dongwu coordinated the evacuation from the surface. Ships landed and took off in continuous waves. Millions of people crammed into vessels designed for thousands, but there wasn't enough time. There were never going to be enough ships. When the star began to destabilize, 2.8 billion people had been evacuated. 200 million remained on the planets and stations of Proxima Centauri. Dongwu was on one of the last ships to leave. As they jumped to hyperspace, he watched the star explode behind them. A shockwave consumed everything. 200 million people died instantly. President Yuna received the news in her office. She sat in silence for a long moment, then made a decision. "Get me the authorization codes for the Genesis Protocol," she said quietly. The Genesis Protocol was humanity's doomsday weapon. It's developed over thousands of years. It could rewrite matter at the quantum level across light years. It had never been tested at full scale because the simulations suggested it could sterilize entire star systems. If Yuna activated it, she could end the war in an instant. She could destroy the Velkrath homeworld and every Velkrath colony. She could save humanity by committing genocide. Her hand hovered over the authorization button. Behind her eyes, she saw the faces of 200 million dead colonists. But she also saw 6,000 years of human history, 6,000 years of preparation, yes, but also 6,000 years of unity, of cooperation, of building something better. Would she destroy all of that to win a war? Deep beneath the Martian, surface scientists Sunwoo and Arium stood before the Genesis Protocol chamber. The massive device hummed with contained power, ready to unleash destruction across light years. "The authorization codes just came through," Sunwoo said quietly. "President Yuna has given us permission to activate it." Arium looked at the weapon they had spent their entire careers maintaining. "Do you think she'll actually give the final order?" "I don't know," Sunwoo admitted. "I hope not." On Earth, President Yuna sat in the emergency council chamber. Around her, holographic displays showed the Terran council members from across human space. The room was silent as everyone waited for her decision. "The Velkrath have destroyed Proxima Centauri," Yuna said. 200 million of our people are dead. We've activated weapons capable of destroying every human colony. If we don't stop them now, humanity could face extinction. She paused, choosing her words carefully. "The Genesis Protocol can end this war in minutes. We can destroy every Velkrath world simultaneously, but the cost would be billions of lives. Not just Velkrath. The subject species living in their territory would die too. 17 species that we promised to help free." Council member after council member spoke. Some argued for immediate activation. The Velkrath had proven they would use any weapon to win. Humanity had to strike first. Others argued against it. They said that using the Genesis Protocol would make humanity no better than the Velkrath. 6,000 years of preparation would be wasted if humanity became monsters in the process. The vote was split exactly down the middle. 423 votes for activation. 424 votes against. The decision fell to Yuna alone. Before she could speak, a new transmission arrived. Ambassador Kungman's face appeared on the screens. "Madam President, I have an alternative," he said quickly. "The Velsha rebellion has grown beyond our expectations. 62 species are now fighting the Velkrath. And we've made contact with Velkrath military officers who oppose Emperor Tharkal's use of the Starbreakers." He pulled up tactical data. The rebels have access to the Velkrath homeworld's defense grid. They can lower the shields, but only for a brief window. If we can launch a precision strike at the Velkrath leadership, we can end this war without genocide. "It's riskier," Kungman continued. "It will cost more human lives. But it preserves who we are. We didn't prepare for 6,000 years just to survive. We prepared to remain human." Yuna closed her eyes. She thought about her ancestors, going back 240 generations. She thought about every person who had dedicated their life to preparing for this war. What would they want her to do? "Stand down the Genesis Protocol," she ordered. "We're going to do this the hard way." Admiral Deho received his orders within minutes. Gather every available ship. Prepare for a direct assault on the Velkrath homeworld. Coordinate with the rebel forces. It was the most dangerous military operation in human history. Commander Bora led the attack fleet. 3,000 human ships jumped to hyperspace, heading straight for the heart of the Velkrath Empire. They would arrive in 6 hours. On the Velkrath homeworld, the rebels prepared. The Velsha had infiltrated the planetary defense network over decades of careful planning. Other species had smuggled weapons and explosives into key locations. Velkrath military officers who disagreed with Tharkal's genocide had positioned themselves in strategic positions. They waited for the human signal. Emperor Tharkal sat in his palace, unaware of the conspiracy growing around him. He prepared to activate the second Starbreaker. Targeting the human colony of Tau Ceti, his military advisor, a Velkrath named Coulter, approached him. Emperor, we should reconsider. The Starbreakers nearly destroyed our civilization once before. Using them again risks silence, Tharkal commanded. The humans have left us no choice. They will not stop until we are destroyed, so we will destroy them first. Coulter bowed and left the throne room. In the corridor outside, he sent a coded message to the rebels. The Emperor would not be reasoned with. The plan would proceed. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Velkrath home system. Immediately, they were engaged by the system's defenses. Thousands of automated weapons platforms, defense stations, and patrol ships. All ships advance, Bora ordered. Don't stop for anything. We have one shot at this. The battle was chaos. Human ships fought through waves of defenders, taking heavy losses. Every second counted. The rebels could only hold the defense grid open for 10 minutes. Corporal Seogen piloted his fighter through a storm of fire. This was his 30th mission of the war. He had been injured twice, watched friends die, destroyed more enemy ships than he could count. Now he flew toward the Velkrath homeworld, thinking about his ancestor 240 generations ago. That first Seogen had started this journey. Now the current Seogen would help finish it. On the surface, the rebels acted. Explosions rocked military installations. Defense grid control centers went dark. Communications were jammed. The carefully ordered Velkrath military structure collapsed into confusion. Lieutenant Soman coordinated the ground assault from orbit. Strike teams, you are clear to land. The shields are down. You have 8 minutes. 6 human ships dove into the atmosphere heading for the Imperial Palace. They carried strike teams, led by the most experienced soldiers in the fleet. Medical Officer Jiang was aboard one of those ships. She wasn't there to fight. She was there to offer medical aid to anyone who needed it, human or Velkrath. Even in the middle of an assault, she maintained her oath to preserve life. The strike teams landed outside the palace. Velkrath guards engaged them immediately. The fighting was intense, but brief. These guards were ceremonial soldiers who had never seen real combat. Human soldiers had trained for war their entire lives. Seogen's fighter provided air support, destroying Velkrath gun emplacements. He took fire from a ground-based missile and had to eject. His fighter crashed into a Velkrath garden, destroying sculptures that had stood for 10,000 years. The strike team reached the throne room. Emperor Tharkal stood before them, ancient and defiant. "You cannot win," he said. "Kill me, and another will take my place. The Velkrath Empire has existed for 1,000,000 years. You are children playing at war?" The strike team leader, a soldier named Minjae, lowered his weapon. "We're not here to kill you, Emperor. We're here to offer you surrender. End this war. Dismantle your empire. Let the subject species go free." Tharkal laughed bitterly. "Never. I would rather die." He activated a device on his wrist. A poison, fast-acting and painless. The ancient emperor fell to the floor and died within seconds. His last words were a whisper. "You have one young species, but victory will change you. You will become what you fought against." The cycle continues. With Tharkal dead, the remaining Velkrath military command surrendered. The war ended 14 months after it began. The casualty count was devastating. 4.2 billion humans dead. 11 billion Velkrath dead. trillions of other species caught in the crossfire. President Yuna addressed humanity one final time as president. We have one. But the cost was terrible. We must now ask ourselves what we do with this victory. She announced the formation of the Galactic Commonwealth, a democratic federation of all species. The Velkrath would be allowed to join as equals, not conquerors. The subject species would be freed and given support to rebuild. But not everyone agreed with this approach. General Wujin had become popular among those who had lost loved ones in the war. He argued for maintaining humanity's military strength, for preparing for the next threat. There are billions of stars in the galaxy, he said in a public speech. Who knows what else is out there? We can't let our guard down. Dr. Haniel published a report showing how 6,000 years of military preparation had fundamentally changed human society. Violence had become normalized. Every aspect of life was viewed through the lens of defense and warfare. We won the war, she wrote. But did we lose ourselves in the process? Captain Jisoo returned to Ganymede to help rebuild. The work was slow and painful. Millions were dead. Cities were ruins. But people were resilient. As she helped plant new forests in the burned soil, an elderly man approached her. My grandmother told me we would win, he said. She was right. But she never told me how much it would hurt. Engineer Jayan volunteered to help decommission the Genesis protocol. The weapon was dismantled piece by piece, its components scattered across 100 worlds to ensure it could never be rebuilt. Some weapons are too terrible to exist, he told his team. Even if we created them. Even if they could have won the war easier. Some prices are too high. Ambassador Kingman became the first Terran representative to the Galactic Commonwealth Congress. He worked with the Velsha and other freed species to build something new. Something better than Empire. But he saw the challenges ahead. Different species with different values trying to work together. Ancient grudges and recent wounds. It would take time to heal. Admiral Deho retired from military service. He was 92 years old and had seen too much death. He spent his days at the memorial wall on Earth, a structure stretching hundreds of kilometers, inscribed with every name of the human dead. One day, a young cadet named Min Jae approached him. Sir, was it worth it? 6,000 years of preparation, billions dead. Our entire civilization shaped by war. Was it worth it? Deho was silent for a long time. He looked at the names on the wall. He thought about the 240 generations that had prepared for this war. He thought about the children being born now, who would grow up in a galaxy without the Velkrath threat. Ask me again in 6,000 years, he finally said. The Velkrath gave us a deadline, and we turned it into our purpose. Now we have to find a new purpose. One we choose ourselves. That's the real test. What if we fail? Min Jae asked. Then our descendants will have to fix our mistakes, Deho replied. Just like we fixed the mistakes of our ancestors who accepted the Velkrath's ultimatum 6,000 years ago. That's what it means to be human. We prepare, we fight, we survive, and we try to be better. The story ended not with triumph, but with uncertainty. Humanity had won its war. But the galaxy was vast, and the future was unwritten. On Earth, scientists began a new project. They would send messages into deep space, toward unexplored regions of the galaxy. Not threats, but greetings. Offers of friendship and cooperation. President Yuna approved the project with one condition. Include in every message a simple truth. Humanity is willing to fight for its freedom, but we would prefer to build something better together. The first message was sent on the anniversary of the war's end. It traveled at the speed of light toward distant stars, carrying humanity's hope for the future. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, other civilizations received that message and wondered what to make of this young, fierce species that had defeated an empire and chose mercy over revenge. The galaxy watched and waited to see what humanity would become.